Sonic, the heart of your system.
What is up, guys? This is Luke Hill for Kit Guru, and here today we have Intel's brand new Core i9-10980XE. So this is the new high-end desktop X299 flagship and part of Intel's Cascade Lake X lineup. So fundamentally, the Cascade Lake X 10000 series high-end desktop chips are basically slight revisions to the Skylake X 9000 series predecessors, which in turn were slight revisions to the Skylake X 7000 series processors. The big difference here and across the Cascade Lake X lineup, however, are the significant price drops. So the 18-core part is now down from $1979 to $979. They slot into the same LGA 2066 socket with X299 motherboards, so fundamentally all you really need is a BIOS update to be able to support these new processors. If we focus on the key specs, of course we've got 18 cores, 36 threads, and that's built on Intel's refined 14nm process technology. You can say what you want about Intel's struggles with 10nm and how it's not as power efficient as TSMC's 7nm, but their ability to refine the 14nm process as well as they have, especially for high frequency applications, is really, really praiseworthy. They've done a good job to extend the lifespan of 14nm. For TDP, it's officially 165 watts, but we know most motherboards will just ignore that, especially when XMP is applied, and feed as much power as the chip desires. You get 24.7 megabytes of Intel Smart Cache, and you also get AVX512 with 2 FMA units. So for system RAM, it's still DDR4 quad channel, and you also get support for Intel Optane memory if you happen to care about that. So if you're thinking at this point that those specs sound very, very familiar, yeah, you would be correct. And this is because the new Core i9-10980XE is basically a slightly tweaked version of the Skylake X Core i9-9980XE. So the differences are minor, and we'll highlight those. So for the 10980XE, you get higher maximum boost clocks, so 4.8 GHz maximum turbo boost 3 versus 4.6 for the 9980XE, 4.6 turbo boost 2 for the 10980XE versus 4.4 for the 9980XE. But when you dig down into the Intel XTU data, you see that the improved frequencies are particularly predominant for the 10980XE when you load in 1 or 2 cores and 3 or 4 cores. When you load in more than 12 cores, then the frequencies are identical to the 9980XE. With the new chip, you get enhanced memory support, so you can now put in up to 256 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, and this is because 32 gig DIMMs are now supported. And the memory frequency is also improved, so 1 DIMM per channel is DDR4 2933 by default, and 2 DIMMs per channel is DDR4 2666 by default. Of course, if you've got a high performance X299 motherboard, then you can apply XMP and go higher. We use 3200, no problem. Important to note is that you do not get ECC memory support like the competing Threadripper platforms offer. You now get 48 PCIe Gen 3 lanes, and this is 4 more than the 9980XE offered. So Intel DL Boost, or Deep Learning Boost if you prefer, is supported on the new Cascade Lake X 10980XE. The TJ Max is adjusted and is now 86 degrees Celsius versus 84 for the 9980XE. So this is still lower than the 94 degrees Celsius for the 7980XE, but that chip didn't have a soldered heat spreader, which was good for delidding and overclocking, but now you get a soldered heat spreader out of the box. Given that this is a Cascade Lake based processor, you get the security mitigations built in hardware. Now these are the critical security vulnerabilities that were exposed in the past, but there are new ones coming up, it seems like every week, so make sure you keep an eye out for any BIOS updates, any microcode updates and Windows updates. And the most important point probably to most people is that massive $1,000 price reduction versus the 9980XE. So it's now $979 versus $1979 for the 9980XE. That's a big deal, and it's now undercutting AMD's Threadripper 3000 parts, which granted a higher core count, but are also significantly more expensive. So Intel is actually putting itself into a pretty sweet price position with this 18 core, sitting in the valley left between the $750 Ryzen 9 3950X and the $1,400 Ryzen Threadripper 3960X. That's a pretty big gap, and Intel's 18 core could sit quite nicely in there. We'll have to look at the performance to see if that's the case, so let's jump straight into it. As we showed in our XTU frequency screenshots, the Core i9-10980XE runs at 3.8 GHz all-core, asterisk. Now the asterisk there is certain AVX workloads will reduce the clock speed. We saw 3225 MHz all-core averaged in our Handbrake X264 test, and this test used about 85 to 95% of the CPU. The Handbrake X265 test ran at about 3.45 to 3.5 GHz, and CPU utilization was significantly lower, about 35 to 40%. Overclocking was rather challenging with this 18-core processor because it quickly becomes a battle against how much cooling you can throw at the situation. The high heat output from the 18-core meant that we settled for 1.165 volts load voltage according to CPU-Z, and this was stable for 4.6 GHz across our entire test suite and our extended Blender runs. Temperatures hovered just above 100 degrees Celsius on the package, but they were about 10 degrees lower on the cores, so we didn't observe any major throttling to the clock speed. To run this level of overclock, we're pretty confident you'll need a motherboard with a strong VRM power delivery solution, and that's why our Gigabyte X299X Designate 10G was a pretty good choice with a solid VRM and finned heat sinks to whap away that heat. We know there's a lot of power shifting through the VRM because Blender was reporting CPU package power is about 330 watts when overclocked. And also to confirm, we didn't use any AVX offsets for this 4.6 GHz 1.165 volt overclock. This was 10 millivolts lower than the 4.5 GHz result we managed with our 9980XE. So there is a suggestion that the new refined process is perhaps dealing slightly more optimized silicon for the 10980XE. Either way, 4.6 GHz across all 18 cores with no clock speed reductions, even if the temperatures and power consumption were high. That's highly impressive, and that speaks volumes about the high frequency capability for Intel's refined 14nm process technology. Our test system uses Gigabyte's brand new X299X Designate 10G motherboard. The VRM solution and heatsink on this premium motherboard is particularly helpful when pushing the high core count chips with increased voltage levels, as we highlighted in our overclocking results. We tested with BIOS version F3A, which is the latest at the time of testing. For CPU cooling, we used the 240mm Corsair H100X AIO with 2435 RPM SP120L fans. We need that extra fan speed to flush away the heat. Our memory kit is a quad-channel 4x8GB kit of G.Skill Trident Z RGB, 3200MHz C14 memory. 3200MHz with tight timers is still a good recipe for high-end desktop usage, and the Samsung B-Die memory ICs have played well in all of our testing. Gigabyte's beastly Aorus RTX 2080 Ti Extreme graphics card is used for pixel pushing power. We use a custom fan curve to minimize thermal throttling. Power is provided by the Efficiency Sonic Prime Titanium 1000 watt power supply. The clean energy delivered by this unit is very important for the power-hungry high-end desktop chips. Make sure you check out the KitGuru website for more information about our test system, the comparison test system, and our procedures. Now, onto the test results. Starting with Cinebench R15 multi-threaded, the similarities between the 10980XE and the 9980XE it replaces are clear to see. Intel's roughly £1,000 high-end desktop flagship has a tough time hanging with the similarly priced Threadripper 2970WX, with AMD's last-gen chip offering 15% higher performance stock versus stock. Even worse for Intel, the $749 Ryzen 9 3950X also offers higher performance out of the box. Overclocking is where Intel's chip shines, with the speed bump to 4.6 GHz delivering 20% extra performance, now putting the 10980XE faster than the stock clocked Threadripper 2970WX and the PBO overclocked 3950X. Despite the longer runtime and more demanding workload for Cinebench R20, the same performance trends are observed. The 9980XE and 10980XE are basically identical as they both share a 3.8 GHz all-core frequency, provided AVX limits aren't hit. Last-gen Threadripper 2970WX is faster than the Core i9 10980XE by 10%, while the cheaper Ryzen 9 3950X is 5% faster. Leveraging Intel's heavy frequency headroom puts the Core i9 10980XE above stock clocked Threadripper 2970WX by 9%. Intel's OC versus OC performance lead against Ryzen 9 3950X is 10%, albeit with a $230 price premium. A higher maximum boost clock versus the older 18-core high-end desktop flagship delivers a strong performance uplift for the 10980XE in Cinebench 1T testing. Versus AMD's last-gen Threadripper chips, Intel's single-threaded performance lead is mighty, even when the 18-core's top-end frequency is reduced in favour of an all-core overclock. With that said, Intel's Cascade Lake X is outperformed by the Ryzen Threadripper 3000 processors and the cheaper Ryzen 9 3950X. Versus AMD's Zen 2 parts, it is clear that Intel's historic single-threaded performance lead in applications such as Cinebench has been eroded. So next we will look at Blender, and on this one bear in mind that a 50% reduction in render time actually mathematically converts into 100% performance improvement. If you can do one job in 100 seconds on one chip and you can do that same job in 50 seconds on another chip, you can get 2 times as much work done on the faster chip, therefore 100% performance improvement. Yet again, we see basically identical performance between the Core i9-10980XE and its i9-10980XE predecessor in Blender. AMD's Threadripper 2970WX is 19% quicker to complete the render, which converts into 23% higher performance. The lower cost Ryzen 9 3950X finishes 17 seconds or 12% faster than the Cascade Lake X flagship, which translates into 14% higher performance for AMD's mainstream chip. Overclocking is yet again Intel's saviour, with the 4.6 GHz 18 core outperforming both of the aforementioned AMD parts by a comfortable margin and getting to within 5% of AMD's 32 core Threadripper 2990WX performance. Handbrake struggles to saturate 100% of the CPU resources on these high core count chips, so operating frequency becomes even more important. The Core i9-10980XE is a smidgen faster than the 9980XE, as the newer chip is more able to sustain higher frequencies in light of the AVX offset trigger in this workload. AMD's cheaper Threadripper 2950X needs a PBO overclock to outperform the stock 10980XE, while memory accessibility issues for the 2970WX mean Intel's stock Core i9 flagship is 25% faster. The $749 Ryzen 9 3950X puts in a strong fight against the more costly Cascade Lake X chip, with AMD's mainstream part offering 11% higher performance. Throw overclocking into the mix and the strong frequency capability from the Intel 14nm chip and the removal of AVX speed reductions delivers a large performance boost that is only bested by Threadripper 3000. Clearly, our Handbrake X264 conversion test loves frequency in addition to many cores, and Intel's high-end desktop flagship delivers well on that front. Resource utilization on high core count CPUs is even lower for our Handbrake X265 test. Intel's Core i9-10980XE is, again, almost identical to the i9-19980XE it replaces. Compared to Ryzen 9 3950X, AMD's $749 chip is faster than Intel's $979 one, thanks to higher sustained frequencies. Intel does, however, manage to comfortably outperform the Threadripper 2970WX and its awkward memory configuration. Overclocking is where the Intel high-end desktop chips really shine, and Intel's new Cascade Lake X flagship shoots straight to the top of our chart at 4.6 GHz. Even AMD's hefty Threadripper 3000 parts cannot keep pace with the 4.5 GHz plus Intel HEDT chips. In 7-zip's decompression test, we yet again see the performance of the 10980XE is basically identical to the 9980XE. AMD's cheaper Ryzen 9 3950X and Ryzen Threadripper 2970WX both deliver commanding victories versus the Intel high-end desktop flagship, as AMD's Zen architecture is particularly strong for this decompression workload. Even a heavy overclock to 4.6 GHz only allows Intel's best Core i9 to roughly keep pace with AMD's cheaper contenders. Memory bandwidth and accessibility play more important roles in the 7-zip compression test, and this allows the Core i9-10980XE to comfortably outperform AMD's dual-channel Ryzen 9 3950X, in addition to the Threadripper 2970WX with its unique memory system. Even the 16-core quad-channel Ryzen Threadripper 2950X is outgunned by Intel's Cascade Lake X flagship to the tune of 23%. This is a strong result for Intel's new high-end desktop flagship, though the benefits of those 18 cores are somewhat questionable given the proximity of the 16-core i9-9960X's performance. That's the same story for Threadripper 3000 though, which, as it happens, offers significantly higher performance than Intel's more affordable high-end desktop chips. Quad-channel DDR4 and solid high-frequency support through X299 motherboards delivers good memory bandwidth performance for Intel's high-end desktop part. While Ryzen 9 3950X was generally very competitive against the more expensive Core i9-10980XE, quad-channel memory support is one of those features that Intel is clearly charging extra for, and it's one that can pay dividends if you have workloads that demand memory bandwidth. Memory latency is also similar for Cascade Lake X versus Skylake X. Core i9-10980XE is better than Threadripper 3000 and the 2-die Threadripper 2950X in our ADA latency test, but the result is comparable to mainstream Ryzen and is slightly higher than older quad-die Threadripper chips. Intel's mainstream Coffee Lake chips do not use the high-end desktop mesh architecture under the hood, and therefore offer significantly better memory latency performance in our ADA-based testing. This is important to bear in mind for latency-sensitive situations, one of which is gaming. Speaking of gaming, The Core i9-10980XE is an all-round strong performer at many AAA titles thanks to its increased turbo boost bins versus the Core i9-9980XE it replaces. You shouldn't expect mainstream processor levels of game performance, especially when compared to the superb Coffee Lake Core i9-9900K, but you'll commonly see numbers that are perfectly good for even higher refresh rate gamers. In situations where GPU performance is not the bottleneck, the 10980XE is generally slightly faster than Threadripper 3000 offerings, while the older Threadripper 2000 parts are comfortably outperformed. AMD's lower cost Ryzen 9 3950X is certainly a stiff contender for Intel's new 18-core chip though. System-wide power draw from the wall was 323 watts in Cinebench R20, which represents a 17 watt reduction versus the older but similarly quick Core i9-9980XE. We regularly saw software reported CPU package power readings of 220 watts. Despite the high power consumption, Intel's high-end desktop flagship demands less power than the competing Threadripper 2000WX parts and their rigid 250 watt TDP values. The Ryzen 9 3950X offers similar compute performance in many workloads, but demands far less power than the Core i9-10980XE. Intel's frequency headroom could be leveraged well to push the Core i9-10980XE to 4.6 GHz, but that comes at significant cost to the power consumption numbers. Unsurprisingly, the 10980XE cannot compete with the 7nm based Zen 2 parts for performance per watt in Cinebench rendering. The Ryzen 9 3950X offers significantly better energy efficiency, even though its performance level is similar to the flagship Core i9. Compared to the older 12nm Global Foundries built Threadripper chips, however, Intel's Core i9-10980XE is pretty competitive. The similarly priced Threadripper 2970WX offers higher performance in the Cinebench NT run, but it uses disproportionately more power in doing so, making Intel's 18-core chip slightly more efficient based on our numbers. It doesn't take a genius to work out that a $979 processor probably isn't going to score particularly highly in Cinebench performance per pound. Intel's Core i9-10980XE is close to Threadripper 3970X value at stock, though the Intel chip even manages to leapfrog the 24-core 3960X competitor when the i9 is overclocked to 4.6 GHz for free. Threadripper 2970WX also offers decent value in this chart by offering higher performance than the 10980XE out of the box, while currently costing a little less. As a note, high-end desktop chips will rarely outperform mainstream alternatives in this chart, as the value-added features such as extra PCIe lanes and quad-channel memory don't contribute to higher scores in Cinebench R20, but they certainly command a price premium from Intel and AMD. AVX-induced speed reductions at stock help the Core i9-10980XE curb its temperature to reasonable levels under our 240mm Corsair AIO. The physically large heat spreader and soldered interface certainly helps a decent cooler flush heat away from the i9-10980XE CPU. Overclocking is where temperatures start to hit high figures when you're chasing for lofty frequency goals. We regularly saw 100°C package temperature in our testing, though the individual cores did tend to stay a little lower and away from the important TJ Max number. We were happy with the stability that the chip showed with our overclock settings, even if 100°C is somewhat concerning to see. While it may seem a little bit harsh to start off by talking about AMD in our conclusion for this Intel processors review, that's the reality of the situation. The reason this processor is as competitive as it is with regards to pricing is because AMD was very, very aggressive with Threadripper 2000, very aggressive with Threadripper 3000, and very aggressive with Ryzen 9 on the mainstream AM4 platform. And that has pushed Intel into a situation where the previous pricing of $1979 for an 18-core just makes no sense anymore. And now we see a $1,000 price drop to $979, which significantly enhances the competitiveness of Intel's new 18-core high-end desktop flagship. So we can start our performance discussion by saying that while Intel's new 18-core flagship delivers solid performance, it's not in the same performance league as AMD's new Ryzen Threadripper 3000 processors. And that is understandable given that they start at $400 more expensive and they're on a more expensive platform. Focusing on the more reasonable price competitors though, when we look at the Intel 18-core 10980XE versus AMD's similarly priced but previous gen Ryzen Threadripper 2970WX, the AMD chip is pretty good when it comes to tile-based rendering applications and generally serves Intel's lower core count part a beat-in at stock clocks. However, the unique memory architecture for AMD's 24-core part means that its performance drops off a cliff and you just do not see that level of performance loss with Intel. the consistent performance from the 18 core, even if there are some areas where AMD's 24 core wins, there are other areas where Intel's 18 core wins very, very comfortably. We think at this roughly £900 to £1,000 price point, the 10980XE is a significantly better buy than the Threadripper 2970WX. AMD's Ryzen 9 3950X is a pesky thorn in the side of Intel's new high-end desktop flagship. The 16-core part is generally as fast, sometimes faster, sometimes a little bit slower, but generally in the same ballpark as the new 18-core flagship, but it costs significantly less. AMD's single-threaded performance on that highly clocked Ryzen 9 part is also as good, if not better, than the single-thread performance of the Core i9 10980XE, and that wasn't the case prior to Zen 2, so that's not really a factor that needs to be held on to, unless you've got low core count workloads plus heavy core count workloads where the Turbo Boost 2 and Turbo Boost 3 bins are beneficial for the Core i9 10980XE. You'll generally need to leverage the superior frequency headroom of the 10980XE and overclock it to beyond 4.5 GHz in order to comfortably outperform the Ryzen 9 3950X in a variety of tasks. That comes with the expense of higher temperatures, higher power consumption, and efficiency that looks, quite frankly, unreasonable compared to the Ryzen 9 chip, but if you want the performance, that is what you'll have to do. Continuing with the 10980XE versus Ryzen 9 3950X comparison, because we think this is a comparison that a lot of people will realistically make when they're looking at their purchase, there are reasons for the Intel part and reasons for the AMD part. So with the Intel part, if you need quad channel memory, if you need AVX 512 or DL Boost support, and if you want more PCIe lanes and don't care about the bandwidth, don't care if they're Gen 3 or Gen 4, the Intel Core i9 10980XE is a good option for similar levels of performance. Of course, the caveat there is that Intel expects you to pay about $230 more for those features, and if they're worth $230 more, then fine, it's a pretty good buy. If you're just interested in performance and don't care about PCIe lanes, don't care about quad channel memory, it's pretty hard to justify that $230. Where Cascade Lake X's new pricing structure will really prove its worth with the 18-core 10980XE is to early X299 adopters. So if you spent $1,000 on the 10-core Core i9 7900X and an X299 motherboard back when X299 and Skylake X launched 2.5 years ago, this is now a really good drop-in replacement for that motherboard. You can get significantly higher performance within, quite frankly, minutes. So overall, the battle for the Core i9 10980XE versus Ryzen 9 3950X is a pretty difficult one to declare a winner. Obviously, there are points for the Intel part, points for the AMD part, but it really comes down to your individual workloads, the value of quad channel memory, the value of those additional PCIe lanes, and how much you're willing to compromise with regards to overall platform features and power efficiency. So to summarize, the new Cascade Lake X parts take the crown from the Skylake X parts that they replace with hefty price reductions, and that's a good thing. You get a little bit more performance versus Skylake X for a massive reduction in price. With that said, AMD remains in a very tough competitive position versus these Intel parts, but if you're already invested in the X299 platform and simply want more performance without switching motherboards, without reinstalling Windows, without investing in a completely new platform, the new Cascade Lake X Core i9 10980XE is a really good choice at $979. Crazy what a $1,000 price drop can do, right? I've been Luke Hill for Kiku. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did like it, give us a like and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to see more of what we do, then make sure you head on over to the Kiku website and hit the bell icon on the YouTube page. If you like the video and you want to support what we do, then head on over to our merch store and also see if you want to back us on Patreon. I'll see you next time.